Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Nawab Hassan Hussain Qureshi. Welcome to the first episode, a first very, very special episode of the Multan Sultans podcast. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the owner of Multan Sultans, Syed Gohar Shah. Welcome to the podcast.
Sir, it's a pleasure. I actually can't believe that it's finally happening and we're here today having this conversation. At one point, I thought I'd have to wait 4 or 5 years. At some points, I felt like we'd never see Multan play in the PSL ever again. But as fate would have it, we did it. We did it within the same couple of weeks of finding out that Multan will no longer exist. And it's just funny how life works and things pan out.
You took it a bit personal, huh? You took the idea of Multan not being there. You made it happen. Tell me what it feels like for you right now, being the owner of Multan Sultans. It's one thing to own a franchise. It's one thing to own, a team. But you brought your team back where you wanted it to be.
So essentially, as I said on auction day, it was always going to be Multan. The reason why I didn't participate in the auction for the first two teams was precisely because Multan wasn't up for sale in those, and that was my understanding. And in hindsight, if I'd known that how things would pan out, I would have definitely taken part in that auction, not stated a name for a couple of weeks, waited for the actual Multan auction. Had I known, it would have gone to Pindi and then, switched over. And I feel like maybe I would have gotten the same deal that I have now. But again, you look back and you think that you would have done things differently. On the question about feelings, it's so funny because for the first time in my life, I felt humiliated, even though I felt like I'd not done nothing wrong. And humiliation, I realized, wasn't a byproduct of anything that I'd done. I was sat on the big stage in front of the world, and there was something that I couldn't afford. And that's okay. Like, that's happened to me many, many times. But it almost felt like I couldn't afford it to a point where it was beyond any estimates that I had. And then to make matters worse, the whoever won it or whoever outbid me also happened to change the team name within the same couple of minutes. So like it was one thing after the other, and both in a very short space of time, which is why I got emotional, and I sort of just felt helpless because I was thinking to myself, I almost take so much of my savings and so much of capital, only for it not be good enough for the team, B, then also losing it for the entire region. So, but look, things pan out, and I'm so glad that I could be here today. And the PCB's been very supportive. They've helped us turn the story around, and we look forward to shaping a brand new chapter over the next decade.
That auction kind of brought you to the notice of not just Pakistan but the world. We saw everybody talking about you. You spoke about that feeling of being so close, and then you understood. In fact, I saw so many people tag you, Multan Sultan fans.
Yeah.
They just tagged you and they said, "Look, this was the savior. This was the person who wanted." And then so we reached that low. We reached that awful low for all of us. What was it that drove you not to give up, Gohar? Because the easiest thing to do, if I'll be very honest with you in this situation, is like you said, wait 4 years, wait 5 years, go away. You didn't give up. You kept fighting for this. You kept fighting, and you were very clear. You're fighting from Multan Sultans.
That's
You're
right.
fighting for the region. It's not like there was no lack of clarity for what you wanted to do. What kept that fire burning to come out and make it still happen?
So, in terms of the stubbornness, I think I've always been very stubborn. I set myself goals, and then I wake up every day thinking to myself that this is the reason why I've gotten out of bed. This is the purpose. This is what I'm trying to achieve. And one of the things then, ever since I decided I was going to buy Multan Sultans, that's what I was vying for. So every day I woke up, even after Multan Sultans had gone to Pindi, the goals essentially didn't change. And I'm not the type of person who scripts them off without achieving them. So that's one side of things. The other is you take a step back and you have to understand my motivation of trying to be involved with the league, with Multan Sultan. So the motivation is a two-step approach. The first being, I wanted to ensure that my region, the region, my ancestral home, always has representation, especially in the sport that we all love.
Yeah.
I don't want to make this political. I don't want to say anything contentious, but in terms of cricket, it would have been a disaster if South Punjab lost its only representation in the league, especially when almost every other region was being represented. So that was the first motivation. The second motivation for me was that I, having been a professional cricketer myself, um, cricket's very, very dear to me. It's almost like my first love. And when I see my team lose, when I see our rivals being so far ahead of us, it hurts. And there's only so much that you can take in terms of disappointment, but also at the same time, again, referring to the helplessness. So I'm disappointed but helpless as well because I couldn't make it as a cricketer, so I couldn't change things myself on the field. But then when the opportunity arises to change things from a management perspective or someone who could bring a new perspective, I thought, you know, that made a lot of sense. So my secondary motivation was solely cricketing. I wanted to bring change into how the game's played, what the mindset of our cricketing fraternity is, and how we can bridge the gap, which has only increased over the years with our major rivals.
So, having been part of the system, you mentioned you were a professional first class cricketer, kept coming through the system, seeing it for all that it was. What what is the young Gohar Shah of that time, and where you are today? What in your mind? What are the immediate changes you'd like to see? I know we're just getting away from the PSL for a second here, but that was obviously a driver for you, having been through the system. You're not someone who's coming in from the outside. You're someone coming in from the inside, having experienced the highs and the lows, having played first class cricket. You understand what it's like for players, for support staff. You understand the system. How much of that was a motivating factor for you, that okay, having seen this system, like you said, it's one thing about being helpless, but now you're in a position to make the very changes that you want to make.
So essentially, again, to reiterate your point, I am a product of the system. I spend at least 4 or 5 months every year, ever since I was 13, um, playing regional tournaments, playing for Lahore, getting up through the age group. So I would really consider myself as a product of the system.
Yeah.
And from both perspectives, me as a player and me as an observer someone who's part of the system, um, I observe two things. And when you're part of the system, you don't really realize.
No.
It took me to going to Loughborough University, which had a state-of-the-art setup for sport, to realize how much of a gap there is between how we train and how they train. And bear in mind, that was the university side. Yes, we have the England National Cricket Academy there, so we could monitor our performance and our metrics against the England lads. But at any given point, I realized that we're so far behind in so many different facets. And it only took me to look at it from an outside perspective to figure out what was wrong inside. Because when I was part of the system, I thought this is the best, as good as it gets. And as a player too, when I was playing, I probably thought I was better than I really actually was. And there has to be some element of delusion in any professional athlete. But looking back now, I would have done things a lot differently. I think I would have trained smarter. If I had seen the vision of how the game would very quickly turn towards T20 cricket and the franchise model, I would have probably focused on being an all-round player, rather than an out-and-out fast bowler, um, from a very young age, because I think there's a huge lack of fast bowling all-rounders, especially in our country, in our system too. And this was never the case. We had fast bowling all-rounders for decades, and all our fast bowling all-rounders were probably the best in the world as well. And the reason for the importance of a fast bowling all-rounder is they provide the team a lot of balance.
Yeah.
And they have that what's the word, aura
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah, of
themselves,
course.
where they can win the game with the ball, they can win the game with the bat. And not saying spin all rounders don't have that,
No, no.
but fast bowlers naturally, and because of the structure of the game, they're put into a little bit more of a clutch
Situation. Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Anyway, so we're going off track here. Going back to the system, I spent a lot of years um, trying to articulate what's wrong with our system, and most times I felt I wasn't going to be heard. I remember once I saw Bazid Khan's plan, and he iterated it really, really well. He articulated how the game, the domestic structure needs a revamp. Now, I'm not saying his way was right or his way was wrong, but the core idea that something needs to happen remains.
Yeah,
Because clearly our cricket's regressed, and those are facts.
yeah, yeah.
I can't say with conviction whether someone's model is better than the other, but what I do know is that our cricket's regressing. And so over time, when I thought more and more about how our game could improve and how we can encompass the Pakistani cricket spirit and not lose that, at the same time, I worked on this model, and we finally came to a conclusion of something that may work. And once that model was ready, that's only when I jumped in to make a difference. And the model is called Total Cricket. I will be introducing it more. Everyone associated with PSL will be hearing about it a lot more. But long story short, it's a derivative of Johan Cruyff's Total Football. There is a baseball element to it as well. Baseball, though, predominantly bats you out of the game,
Yeah.
whereas Total Football is just utter chaos, high energy in all facets at any given point. So every live delivery is an action for all 11 players, which includes the times where only two batters are batting too. So I know it sounds silly.
No, but it's you want the entire 11 to be in at all times. You
That's
want them
right.
to be invested even if they're not batting, even if they've gotten out or they have to come in next. You want that investment from the players
That-
into what's going on.
And over 3.5, 4 hours, that's not asking for a lot.
No.
And the caveat is it does require a lot of athletic ability and a high level of fitness. But my logic is if you're a professional athlete, your career spans 10 to 15 years. If you cannot maintain your athletic ability and if you can't maintain your fitness for that period of time, because that's your career, and you guys are the luckiest people in the world. I would swap places with any one of you in a jiffy. And so if you can't be honest to your profession over such a short career span, then you're not doing justice to your profession or your nation, both, especially if you're playing international cricket.
Noor, take me back to your earliest memories of cricket. Tell me about, for example, we want to know where were you born? What's your earliest memory of cricket? Your first heroes. What made you want to become? Because we hear this story from a lot of people. The desire. Everybody wants to be a cricketer. Being a cricketer requires a lot of sacrifice, requires a lot of hard work. You've already spoken about how you're a product of the system, but that's not an easy system. There's a lot of struggle and fight, irrespective of who you are and where you come from. That fight and that struggle, because your aim, like everybody else's, is to go all the way to the top. So for young Gohar, what was the driving force? What were the memories, and who were the people, and any games, anything, for a lot of people of a certain generation, it's the 92 World Cup. For others, it's the 2009 World Cup. For even younger people now, it's the 2017 Champions Trophy. So take us back to that time about how a young Gohar Shah fell in love with cricket, and it shaped so much of who you are today.
So I actually remember it very clearly. I'm not sure whether it was 1998 or 1999. I was 3 or 4 years old. There's a Coca-Cola final in Sharjah,
Yeah.
and India was chasing. There were 9 down, and they needed, I think, 3 or 4 of the last ball, or they needed 2 of the last ball, I think. and Moin Khan was captain, I believe. I may have maybe getting this wrong, but he brought up the whole field to block the single, and it was just so fascinating for me as you know a very young kid, seeing my whole family glued in front of the TV, and then all of these players also almost in the same vein as everyone was around. Yeah. So you see all of the whole family, everyone stopped what they're doing, surrounding the TV, and then similarly all the fielders surrounding the pitch in the same vein, and then just the euphoria as soon as we won and the players running away with the stumps. uh, I fell in love that night. The next morning, I threw a hissy fit in the house. I said I want to play cricket. Like, I want to do what those guys were doing on TV. So my granddad, um, very kindly, he said, okay, you know what, this is getting annoying. So let's go take him. He took me to Ichra, I believe, where there was a lot of cricket equipment. And then, yeah, and then we sat around and he told me, okay, whatever you need, we got a pair of stumps, bats, balls, pads. And then we came home. Then once I came home, I realized, okay, we have another problem. I have no one else to play with. I'm the only son. So essentially over time, my friends started to pick up on it, and I mean, I don't know how I can articulate it, but I was blessed enough to have individuals in my household, that were working with us and that could take breaks during their work hours, around their work hours, and then I started playing with them. And since they were all much older, I picked up the game a lot quicker. And I always had the competitive spirit, so it was never go easy on me, it was always go harder on me, and then that allowed me to slowly build up. And then next thing you know, you're the best player in your school, and essentially then you end up at a club, and then from your club to your district, and so on. And then to answer your other question about the background, like I said, my ancestral village, my dada comes from Jalalpur Pirwala. My dadi, she's from Alipur. So, that whole belt of South Punjab, we're very, very close to it. We still have very close ties with the region. Both me, my dad, we're there regularly. And then in terms of my upbringing, I was born and raised in Lahore. Went to school here, and then after graduating from high school, I went to Loughborough to play cricket there. It's the best cricket program in the world. In my batch alone, we ended up having 2 English Test players. James Bracey, he played a couple of tests. Sam Cooke played a couple of tests for England. So it was a very, very competitive program. I remember at one point in time, everyone had a professional contract in the setup. So yeah, I was lucky. I was lucky also that I could get I could continue my education. I got a formal degree whilst also reliving my dream to play professional cricket. So yeah, that's effectively it. My whole family were big cricket. We follow cricket very passionately. Like I said before, cricket's my first love. So yeah, we're very excited. I'm very happy to be a part of the ecosystem. Now the real test is, can we help it improve for the better?
Inshallah. You talk about Jalalpur Pirwala, not very far from Burewala, where a certain fast bowler that Pakistan have had, one of Pakistan's greatest fast bowlers of all time, was he someone? I mean, I know by the time you were growing up, he was coming to the end of his career. But what's the who were the players that inspired you to want to be a fast bowler? Because many people feel in cricket the toughest job is wanting to be and actually being a fast bowler.
So it's so nice that, especially for all the individuals that grew up around the time I grew up, we had a lot of Pakistani fast bowlers to look up to.
Yeah.
You could try to mimic Shoaib Akhtar's action, you could try to mimic Wasim Akram's action, and had Waqar Yunus. Imran Khan was still, very much in everyone's mind as a fast bowler. And then in the periphery as well, you had some really good names. Mohammad Akram wasn't too far behind. Then you had Mohammad Zahid, Fazli Akbar. Everyone used to talk about how good he was on his day.
Mohammad Sami made such a great
Mohammad Sami was rapid as well. So it was just like I don't know why I decided to be a fast bowler, knowing that this is what the benchmark is and that's what the competition will look like. But you almost took it for granted, to have a whole battery of 90-mile-an-hour bowlers. I don't think after the West Indies anyone has ever had that, and all had a plethora of different skills, which we still haven't seen. I still haven't seen the ball reverse the way it used to in the 90s, and maybe the Kookaburras changed the dynamics, but still that was very, very awesome to watch. And even when we look at highlights in our spare time, the things that they were making the ball do, they were pretty incredible. But in terms of a hero, me being a left-arm fast bowler myself, it was Wasim Akram. Like, I actually, you don't value how skilled he was until you've actually played the game. And as you grow older, you think, okay, well, he was much older, so he could do it. But then you keep getting older and you can't do it. And then you're just like, what? Like, how's that even possible? So yeah, I mean, kudos to him. He's the greatest ever.
Absolutely, and I think it's amazing that we just saw recently, what was it, Mitchell Stark going past him, and when they asked Mitchell Stark, he said, "I'm sorry, Wasim's always going to be the greatest. We're not having this conversation." Okay, so the pedigree is great. The heroes, the people you're looking up to is fantastic. Now, I want to come back to something important. I know you touched on it briefly, and we talk about it more as it goes on. But in your mind, in your mind's eye, what does total cricket stand for you when you talk, and for those who love football and know about total football, that they'll know total football is so much more than just a philosophy. For you, the kind of brand of cricket you want your Multan Sultans franchise to play, uh for you, what does total cricket mean?
So effectively, like you said, it's a way of life. I would expect everyone, whether they're playing staff or coaching staff or backroom staff, everyone to embody it. I feel like I sort of embodied it with my relentless drive to make this happen, to get us where we are in such a quick time. Similarly, I'd expect all of the players, the coaches to push towards a relentless, very aggressive spirit of not letting the intensity subside. The tournament's only 10 games. So, I'm not asking people to run a marathon every day. I'm just expecting them to be locked in for 10 games over a 2-month period for 4 hours a day. And then effectively, everything you do outside that is to ensure that for those 4 hours, you can actually play at 150%. And just to give you a brief of what total cricket is outside that, it is, so say you're batting, the expectation would be you're very proactive. So there's no concept of let's dig in here. There's no concept of, okay, we've lost a few wickets, let's lay low for a little bit, which is, I feel like, culturally has become the norm in our country's game. It is always play the game very proactively. Similarly with the ball, I'll give a very basic example. Say if there's 6 runs left of 6 balls. Now the game can finish in one delivery, right?
Yeah.
Because you're one hit away. So why try to save the 6 runs? And if they've got 3 wickets in hand, my expectation from my players would be to have the mentality of, I actually just need to bowl 3 wicket taking balls, which statistically is very low, but that's the mentality I expect. So you're not trying to defend at any given point, you're always trying to attack. So if your strike rate, if you're taking wickets every 10 deliveries or every 6 or 7 deliveries, you're bundling teams out in 11 overs. And even if they bat at a strike rate of 150, you're still restricting them, in around the par stage. So why why slow down? Or even if you have the team reeling, why take your foot off the gas? You just never let the others breathe, which also sort of disrupts their tactics, and under pressure people make bad decisions. So effectively, when you create that element of chaos, and similarly in the field, when now that the teams are there's 8 teams rather than 6, the talent pool is sort of diluted.
Yeah.
So when you look on paper, there's not a large difference between the first team and the eighth team in the league. They're all, I'd say, very close together, especially if you start picking the first 11s. In that instance, the difference, obviously, if someone bats or bowls out of their skin, everyone has their day. That's a one-off. But over a longer period of time, say 10 games or 3 seasons, if you're saving an extra 15, 20 runs in the field, you're going to win more games than you're going to lose. And in order to do that, you have to have a very athletic, intense, fit fielding unit. So I'm willing to compromise on a certain level of skill to make up for it in the field, because those 20, 15, 25 runs that no one really optically sees actually make a significant difference. So total cricket encompasses all of those facets in all of those different periods of the game.
We hope you enjoyed this very special and poignant first episode of the Multan Sultans podcast. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Let us know your thoughts. Keep in touch with us as we bring you the entire story of Multan Sultan's return to the HPL PSL.